Day 2 of the June 99 7-day retreat in Springwater. In at least 3 private meetings and 1 group meeting, authority was a topic, maybe the topic. And in listening to what people were saying, I realized there is confusion about this word authority. I've used it rather loosely, not defining what I mean by it. And maybe it would be good to drop that particular word altogether and rather say what it is that one is talking about. It's easier to negotiate in concepts, and the mind doesn't have to really stop and look carefully, which takes time and energy. So just before this talk here, I went to look up in the dictionary. I couldn't write it all down. There's a lot under those words. Interesting, author is one who originates something, an author. The word meaning that, not that every author originates something, who creates something. Authoritarian, meaning unquestioning obedience to authority, as that of a dictator. Authoritative, based on competent authority, coming from an expert or one who is properly qualified. Authoritative, saying something authoritatively. Also, it means fond of giving orders. Authority itself is the power or the right to give commands and enforce obedience. The power or right to give commands and enforce obedience. Also, under point number 8, there are 6 in between there that I didn't write down. Also, self-assurance and expertness that comes with experience. Authority. So, I have to be careful, because every mind is maybe fixated on a particular meaning. I remember years ago somebody saying to me quite authoritatively, with self-assurance, "Don't put down authority," she said. "I come here because I like to hear or listen to somebody who talks authoritatively." With, we read here, self-assurance, we can maybe leave the self out. Assurance that comes from not just experience, but also looking, right now, looking, seeing, being in the clear about something. And she added, this doesn't mean that what you say I buy wholesale, repeat, etc. So, when I say this has nothing to do with authority, putting something out, conveying something, offering it for inspection. What I mean to say when I say this is not authority is don't just take it on faith, believe it, repeat it, swallow it, but wonder about it. Maybe it's clear instantly. That happens. People tell me there was a lot of confusion coming to the talk, and all of a sudden a shift. things cleared up and the confusion was gone. Maybe that doesn't happen instantly. And maybe what is said is not clear, could be clarified better. So one listens to it, and if it's not clear, one wonders about it and has the opportunity to bring it up in a meeting, group or single, to go into clarifying freshly. So all I'm saying, and I need to express it better next time, this is not said to be accepted unquestioningly. And all of us may have had experience with traditions where you just don't question certain things. Sometimes people have told me, you're not allowed to question something here. And I say, what is that? Maybe we have blind spots. But let's find them. And not just accuse each other sort of vaguely. But be specific and see whether we can't question whatever someone brings up and take it seriously. And respond, not as we feel the person wants us to respond, but respond from our own looking and questioning and listening. It may take a while. Sometimes when something is not clear, particularly in a retreat, I personally find the best way to clarify it is to sit quietly. Not necessarily think about it, but the problem is there on the back burner or whatever burner. And it's like a murky puddle that one doesn't stir into, but lets sit there in all its murkiness. And it happens that the sediments settle out. And a while later the pond clears up and reflects the clouds and the branches above it. Several people also brought up that they had thought, having listened to me before tape or previous retreats, that they had thought this business of authority or making Toni into an authority has been put down, was finished for them. And yet, upon closer inspection or during this group meeting, noticing, no, it is still very much alive. This thing that the brain has of making people into images, preferred images. Something that gives one a feeling of security, belongingness, importance. We like to be with the image of a person, or if the person isn't there, just the image in fantasy, because it also seems to rub off on us, to be in the ambience of that image. The image says the person is important, whatever, wise, infallible. And if I'm with this person, something sort of rubs off on me. It may not be spelled out this way, but there's sort of some kind of a feeling. Because we love to be in the ambience of important people, people who we think, the brain thinks are important. One person mentioned something like this, noticing that there is some kind of a Toni compartment in the mind where she is, and sort of, I'm putting it in my own words, sort of judging when I read something, spiritual literature, oh, does she talk about that? What would she say? And sort of tossing it in the basket if this compartment says, no, this is nothing she's interested in, or she doesn't talk about. And it happens so surreptitiously. It happens. It happens in the human brain. Does the authority, the person who one thinks knows it all or is is wise, enlightened? Do they approve of that? What do they think about it? I must ask, or I remember that's what they said, and therefore this is not in tune. So I don't need to bother with it. Something like that. Does that happen to us? I think once you notice that, this compartment, I called it a shrine. One may have a little shrine there for somebody. Consulting the shrine. Is this okay? Or isn't it? One notices this is happening and one can be bemused by it, amazed, and then wonder, does this really impact my ability to look for myself? Okay, the brain is doing that, it's always done it, it does it for everybody, more or less. So here, it's just been discovered. But does that impede or prevent the ability to look at an article that I was just about to toss into the basket and see for myself, not just in comparison to what the shrine says? I think we have that capacity, in spite of all the machinations of the brain. Fantasy images and memories. And also, in coming to a talk, somebody giving a talk whom one has found speaks with what? Mind the words. Talking out of looking, listening. Not just repeating or quoting what other people have said. And finding this is helpful to oneself. Does this mean that one can only function in the presence of this person? One has to test it out. Helpful though it is to listen to a clear mind expressing itself, does one become dependent on that? Which is the thought, I can't do it myself. That idea may be the biggest hindrance. Because I have the idea I can't do it myself, I have to pick up a book, I have to go to a talk. This strong idea impedes, does it? The looking for oneself? See, the two don't need to conflict, listening or reading clear writings, listening to clear talks, need not interfere with looking for oneself. This moment, even this moment, unless you're just recording what is being said, you're looking. We're looking together, aren't we? At how the mind creates this authority image, somebody who knows better and needs to be consulted and needs to tell me, answer my questions, answer my prayers. To see that this is operating. And then wonder, what does it do beside spinning and spinning? Does it prevent hearing the wind and the leaves and the birds singing and calling? Does it prevent listening to the breathing, sensing the heat and cold, and seeing thoughts arise about, I want her to like me? It came up last night, this tremendous urge or desire for the authority which is sort of in the place of a parent, to love me, to approve of me, to think I'm great, good, important. And the opposite, the fear that they may like somebody better than me. I just made a fool of myself in front of her or others. To see that operating in this human body-mind with its tremendous effects, tensions all over, contractions, chemicals flowing in all directions at the thought, she loves me, or they disapprove of me, or they love somebody else more than me. Have a more personal relationship with someone else. To see this whole spectacle that so governs our lives, but can be exposed to the light of day. And then wondering, is this the only way I'm functioning? It's a very important, not important, very powerful way, because it is so affecting our body. Jealousy, envy, fear, anger, self-deprecation, loneliness, abandonment. And where does it all originate? What maintains it? What keeps it going? Somebody also remarked with regard to this whole authority thing that you can carry this saying, I'm no authority and we have no authority here, to the other extreme where nobody dares say anything to anybody for fear of being viewed as an authority. Well, I want to find out when I'm not inclined or afraid to say something to somebody. Not just say I'm afraid to become an authority. That's still too superficial. What is going on? Am I afraid that this person will not like me? Will give me a hard time? Will fight me back? Will talk to others about me, putting me in a bad light? All those considerations, are they there underneath just saying I'm afraid to be an authority? Or do I hesitate to talk with somebody because I'm not sure this person will hear me? Knowing from own experience with oneself and others how protective we are. There's a thicket of thorns to protect what? Ourselves, our image. Our what seems as our bare livelihood, protected from attack, from deflation, from criticism. How can we talk freely to each other if we're afraid of criticism? And that's also too superficially put, afraid of this hurt, damage to what I think is myself and what I'm identified with, my department, my territory, my reputation. So We have to talk on a very deep level, explore on a very deep, ongoing level with each other. So that we can hear each other, if even for moments at a time. The mind, the brain is such a distorter. If I feel threatened, the brain will distort what someone says, project intentions upon me, which may not be true, but it doesn't explore it because it's afraid of damage to oneself. We don't put it in those words. These are almost instinctual reflexes, like the knee-jerk. Self-protection and projection onto someone else, that they're against me. They've got it in for me. Whichever way we put it or don't put it to ourselves. So, it's not easy to talk to each other openly. It's such an ideal thing, and we often talk about that. Why can't we just tell each other how we feel about each other and how we feel ourselves? And time again it happens, not always. Sometimes it really begins to flow. And with that comes an energy to explore further. But many times it ends in hurt and alienation because of these mechanisms that spring into action, brain-wise, thought-wise, with the whole body cooperating. I remember starting out somehow many years ago, now 18 years or so, when we separated from the Zen Center. We had huge public meetings, at first still in the center there, and then later in our own rented place. And I was absolutely amazed, aghast at all kinds of criticism coming at me, which I hadn't expected at all. I thought we were all of one mind. For a moment we were, and then this one mind splits apart again. And also that we had quite a big staff at the time. If somebody, quote unquote, did something on staff, it was immediately criticized as the GVZC, that's what we were called at the time, Genesee Valley Zen Center, stands for this, stands for that, which one may not even have known about that it happened, and whether it really happened. And I wasn't used to that at all. I had learned in my upbringing to be really nice. Nice, not aggressive, and my sister was the opposite. So I had learned from her too, she was older, how it didn't bother her to fight. She didn't mind. I didn't want to fight. I wanted people to get along with each other, be nice to each other and be nice to me. And all of a sudden, this thing that I hadn't counted on at all, I thought, my goodness, what did I get into? And feeling the self-protectiveness, defensiveness. And then people telling me, why are you so defensive? And Kyle saying, you were very defensive. No, I'm not defensive. And it makes matters worse. And then beginning to sort of learn as an attitude, to learn sort of bracing myself and listening with this brace. with this armor. Which is possible. One can learn that. And I think you learn that in businesses and corporations, how to listen to your employees and methods to do that. And little by little, I don't remember the course of events, learning and realizing it's all right to listen vulnerably. No need for armor because that impedes the listening, because the prime motive is self-protection, or protection of what one is identified with, the center, the staff, the work. But one has to go through it and see it's all right. I think we touched upon it yesterday. It's entirely survivable to be vulnerable and hear critique. See the knee-jerk reflex to defend it or to say, no, I didn't do this, I did that. And still listen, still remain open and not create hostility or antagonism, enemies, which is the consequence of this defense. I defend myself against you. And here we are, miles and walls apart. And yet, it's all right. It's all right to say to somebody, no, it wasn't like this. This is not what I meant. And it's not defensiveness. There's no one here being defended. What is being straightened and clarified is the thing itself, what happened. Can that be discerned, the difference between that defending oneself and clarifying something? Sometimes the two are really intermeshed, entangled with each other. And then they can sort of filter out, purify, that there's just the issue at hand. And the energy to look and the energy to listen. And maybe understand the confusion in the mind, here or there, where it comes from. Because when we see then that either oneself or someone else with whom one is in argument is confused, and see that confusion, understand it, then it's not a battle, it's just a call for clarification. Maybe not at this time, maybe one realizes it's not possible right now. The emotions are too high, the identification emotions. But we can meet again. Can we? There's something there in this self-defensiveness, self-protectiveness. There is some inbuilt warning system or defense system saying, you cannot be wrong. If you're wrong, then your whole world falls apart. It's not spelled out like this. If it was spelled out like this, one would say, what? Is that really so? But instinctively try to hold this world together by not having made a mistake. It could be too catastrophic, and this is probably past experience involved in that. So we have to really go to the bottom of ourselves and see what it is that is so solid, so seemingly real about myself, other than thinking and memories and all the physical mechanisms defending it, protecting it, wanting to keep it whole or intact. We need to experience for ourselves that that is not what we are. I don't mean as an idea, give me a better idea of myself. No, a freedom from that, which is not separate from the blowing wind, trees bending, green and white, green and white. And then realizing I'm about to creep back into this capsule. We talked about that last night, this capsule existence, which several people agreed with each other, digging it up and then agreeing, yes, we want to live in a capsule a good deal of the time. We're afraid of the other. One person saying it was a moment which was so free, such a thrill. And then, fear. Wanting to get back home into the capsule. Amazing. So when that fear arises, and many people over many years have reported this, a moment of freedom, of no self-center, and therefore freedom, therefore openness, and no division. And then the person may say, I don't know why, but a fear arising. First the thrill and then the fear. And both of those emotions are due to thinking, comparing, remembering, wanting. All of them generated in this capsule living. The freedom from capsule, the absence of it, there is absolutely nothing fearful, frightening, or dangerous about it. Nothing dangerous about it. It's our true being, our true home, as it's been called, not this assumed home. Of enclosure. So how can we find out, or can we find out, the non-danger of openness, of vulnerability? Which does not mean I have to get there. In order to get there, I have to give up this and this and this, and my friends and sex and my best possessions. These are all ideas emanating from the capsule. Those ideas frighten us. Somebody saying, if I'm dead, I won't be able to see this anymore, and the beauty of the sunlit trees, and valleys, hills, the grasses, birds, and deer around. But that's already quite a thought in looking at the view. It's away from looking, isn't it? Away from being, to think, I won't have this once I'm dead. Kyle used to say, when we talk about, he said, there have been millions and trillions of years that I didn't have this before I was born. So why fret about it for the next million trillion years? There's also thinking. But some thoughts are more calming than others. Maybe that's what one person yesterday in the group meant. I didn't quite know what she was talking about. That to take certain ideas into one's life and live them. Now, I can't. We have to get into this again before I repeat it. But coming back to where I started from, some ideas are more felicitous than others, to postulate in the mind that humankind is full of enmity, full of violence, incurably so. It's a basic human law, each one out for himself or herself. And this is how even the atoms work. To have a worldview like this is different from thinking that maybe we're all one interconnected whole field of movement and unfolding. So, where are we? Is it an invitation to think or an invitation to be in openness with wind and birds and whatever thoughts may arise and cease? Arise and cease. In space, empty space. We will end here for today.